1 second. I turned it off. All right, I'm ready.
She's so excited.
All right.
I'm somebody.
You could be a hand
Right.
like Steinfeld.
The nostrils or nares are the external opening of the nasal cavity. The conchae are the ridges, which are sticking in from the lateral wall of the nasal cavity. So this is the superior nasal conchae, the middle and inferior nasal conchae. The maxilla forms part of the hard palate, which divides the nasal cavity from the oral cavity. And then the back of the hard palate here is the palatine bone. The mandible, the lower jawbone, which we see cut in the sagittal section right there. And then the hyoid bone, also cut in a sagittal section here, is the structure right here. The uvula is this projection at the end of soft palate. The tongue is this muscle which is filling most of the oral cavity here. We can see sinuses, frontal sinus here above the nasal cavity, and sphenoid sinus here above and a little behind your nasal cavity. Parts of the pharynx, the nasopharynx, starts way up here behind your nasal cavity and goes down to the end of your palate. Oropharynx goes from the end of the palate to the level of the hyoid bone. And then laryngopharynx goes from the hyoid bone down to where trachea and esophagus split. There's an opening for the auditory tube here up in the nasopharynx, so that's your auditory tube orifice. Also in the nasopharynx we have the pharyngeal tonsil, and then down in the oropharynx we have palatine tonsil, which is this little guy at the end of the palate, and then our lingual tonsil at the base of the tongue. Then we can also see structures of the larynx on the sagittal head. So this here is the epiglottis, which is one of the pieces of cartilage that makes up your larynx. That's the one that snaps down over the opening when you swallow. Thyroid cartilage is the large cartilage in front, and then the cricoid cartilage is the most inferior cartilage here, and you can see that it's much taller. This is also cricoid cartilage in the back, and this is the front of it. Then this structure inferior to the larynx is the trachea, and you can see the edges here of the rings of tracheal cartilage. And then behind the trachea, this tube here is esophagus.
Alrighty. One more good zoom.